Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. If you're new here, consider subscribing. It really helps keep these stories coming. And while you're here, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Now, sit back, relax, and let's get into the story. They told the public it was a controlled evacuation zone inside a national forest. On paper, it sounded orderly. In reality, it felt like we had drawn a loose circle around a bad dream and hoped it would stay inside. My name is Daniel Mercer. I was a law enforcement ranger with the United States Forest Service, assigned out of the Bend Fort Rock Ranger District in Central Oregon, working in the Deschutes National Forest. Before the outbreak, my job was mostly worn tires, illegal campfires, and the occasional drunk driver trying to race a forest road. By the time the emergency alert went out about the infection, my workdays were field triage for frightened families, roadblocks, and escorting National Guard convoys to staging areas in the pines. When the emergency alert, unknown predatory life form, confirmed in the National Forest Evacuation Zone, scrolled across the incident command board 3 weeks later, my first reaction was that somebody had made a bad joke. Then I saw the radio traffic that went with it. Fire crews missing, wildlife officers not answering their check-in calls, containment teams reporting movement outside burn perimeters that did not match any known animal behavior. And then the screaming on the last recorded transmission from a Type 6 engine crew on Division Charlie. I was there when they played that recording in the planning tent. No one raised their voice. No one tried to call it fake. Everyone just got very quiet, which is how you know something is wrong at an incident command post. Trucks can be idling 20 feet away, a generator humming by the logistics trailer, maps flapping in the wind, and if the people go quiet, it feels like the entire place holds its breath. "Play it again," Operations Section Chief Reynolds said. He was a tall, lean man with gray in his beard and the tired eyes of someone who had been on incident management teams since before I graduated academy. He leaned over the laptop like he was trying to get closer to the sound. The recording started with normal noise. Engine whine. Someone breathing near the mic. A male voice, calm but focused. "Division Charlie, Engine 346, the voice said. "We are at the grid you gave, looking for the flagged burn site. Visibility about 30 yards. Smokes hanging low. No sign of the crew from earlier. Copy?" A woman's voice answered from the command trailer, recorded from hours earlier. "Copy, Engine 346, Division Charlie. Last contact with Crew 7 was at 1900 hours. Continue to the flagged site and report any sign of them. Be alert for compromised trees and hotspots." There was a crackle, a reply. Boots on dry needles. Someone coughing from the smoke. The sound of Nomex brushing brush. A second male voice cut in, a little younger. "I'm telling you, that's not an elk," he said, off mic. "Look at those tracks." The first man, obviously the engine boss, murmured something we couldn't catch. Then the mic picked up again. "Division Charlie, Engine 346. We have footprints near the black edge, single set, deep. Looks like structural boots, maybe 8-inch Vibram soles. But I don't know. The ground's glazed here. Whoever walked through this walked across ash that should be leaving prints. These are like impressions in cooled glass." Someone else coughed again. There was wind. You could hear the calm professionalism as he kept talking, like he was reading line observations. "Temperature at ground level is still high. I'm reading residual heat in the ash, but the tracks are not distorted, like something heavy stepped and cooled it under their weight. It doesn't make sense, but that's what I'm seeing. No sign of Crew 7 yet." For about 20 seconds more, there was just walking and quiet conversation too faint to make out. Then the tone of everything changed. There was a noise that the tech had replayed for us a dozen times already. It was not loud. It was not an animal call that any of us knew. It was something between an exhale and a low growl, but with a strange crackle in it, like air moving over rough material. Nobody in the tent tried to name it. "What was that?" the engine boss said. His voice was close to the mic now, calm but tightened. "Division Charlie, Engine 346. We have an unknown sound near our position, bearing 270, requesting confirmation on any other resources in our immediate area." The reply from Division came, calm and professional. "Engine 346, Division Charlie. Negative on other resources within 1 kilometer. You are alone in that grid. Can you describe the sound?" The recording caught him swallowing. It sounded like breathing, but rough, like air through a mask or over something textured. "We're going to light up the area with our flashlights. Stand by." There were clicks as they switched their handheld lights on. The mic brushed against a jacket. One of the younger firefighters muttered a quick word that would not get past any broadcast filters, then apologized. They moved forward 10 or 15 paces. You could hear the crunch of ash and char. Then something moved in the audio, very fast. It was close to the mic and sounded like dense, hardened material scraping bark. There was another of those rough exhalations, louder now. "What the?" someone said, and then started shouting. The first shout was pure surprise. The second had fear in it. Then the younger voice yelled, "Run! Run!" And the recorder filled with overlapping voices, heavy breathing, equipment clattering. Someone screamed a name. Someone else shouted, "It's right behind us! It's in the black!" For about 6 seconds, the recording was chaos. No words. Just people trying to move through rough ground faster than their training allowed. Then there was the sound of someone being hit or falling. The mic jolted, skidded, and the background turned into a muffled blur of fabric as the radio hit the ground. The last thing the recorder picked up clearly was a long-distance scream, coming from somewhere ahead of the mic. It was high-pitched and terrified. It cut off in the middle, as if someone had clicked mute on a video. After that, there was only the soft crackle of still cooling ash and the wind in the trees. Reynolds stopped the playback. No one asked him to hit play again. "All 3 members never checked in after that?" he asked my supervisor quietly. "Negative," my district chief, Maria Lopez, answered. She was standing with her arms folded, jaw clenched so tight you could see the muscles jump. "Engine 346 was found this morning about 300 yards from their last known coordinates. Cab empty, hand tools scattered. No visible sign of a struggle that we can document, but no crew." "What about Crew 7?" I asked. My voice sounded louder in that tent than I wanted it to. "Still unaccounted for," Lopez said. "Last seen working the burn pit on the north slope of the Division Charlie containment line at around 1800 hours last night. They reported finishing ignition and mop-up, then nothing." "And the wildlife officers?" Reynolds added, looking at me. I cleared my throat. 2 Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife officers assigned to assist with animal monitoring in the zone. Call signs 021 and 022. They were last heard from on a night patrol about 5 miles west of the burn site. 021 reported seeing something moving through the black that was not showing up correctly on his infrared scope. He said the heat signature looked like a person, but distorted. The last thing we heard from him was, "That can't be right. It's in the ash, but it's cooler than the ground." Then the transmission cut. Attempts to re-establish contact failed. Reynolds scrubbed his hands down his face and looked at the big laminated map pinned on the plywood wall. Colored grease pencil lines marked the divisions, safety zones, and heliphones. Red hatching showed the original infection perimeter. Orange lines traced the new containment zone where crews had burned contaminated remains over the last week. "And now we have this," he said. tapping the edge of the laptop with one knuckle. Unknown sounds, missing people, and that alert. He didn't have to read it. The words were burned into all of us already. Emergency alert. Unknown predatory life form confirmed in the National Forest Evacuation Zone. This came down from the Regional Coordination Center after ODFW submitted their thermal imaging data, Lopez said. They're classifying it as a predatory threat with unknown origin, operating primarily at night, exhibiting tracking behavior toward human teams. It appears to be staying in or near the black where we burned infected remains. Possible connection between the burn operations and the infection process. So, they want us to do what exactly? One of the operations aides asked. Stop burning? Expand the evacuation? Or send more people into the dark after missing crews? They want us to confirm what we're dealing with, Reynolds said. Then his eyes settled on me. Which is where you come in, Mercer. I felt all the eyes in the tent shift my way. I'd been on the incident since the first week of the outbreak because I knew these roads, these canyons, these hidden meadows with illegal fire rings better than most. I'd been the one guiding National Guard patrols, escorting medical teams to remote cabins, and, when it came to it, helping contain infected individuals that had made it past the outer checkpoints. What do you need? I asked. My voice stayed level, which pleased me more than it should have. We're forming a night recon team, Reynolds said. Small footprint, 1 Forest Service law enforcement ranger, that's you. 1 ODFW wildlife officer, assuming we can pull someone not already missing. 1 hotshot squad boss experienced in working near compromised trees and hot ash. Plus 1 National Guard medic and 1 Guard infantryman for additional security. You will be equipped with thermal imaging gear, standard night observation devices, and full radio contact. Your objective is to move into the Division Charlie Black between the last known positions of Engine 346, Crew 7, and the missing ODFW team. You will attempt to locate any sign of them, document any unusual tracks or thermal signatures, and withdraw at the first sign of direct threat. That's a lot of optimism, the operations aide muttered. Lopez shot him a look and then turned back to me. You don't have to take this, Daniel. You've been on this incident nonstop. We can pull someone from another district. That someone won't know these canyons as well, Reynolds said quietly. And time matters. Whatever is out there is getting bolder. I thought of the families we had turned away at the roadblocks, sending them to shelters in Bend. I thought of the handful of people we had not been able to save, the ones who had not made it out before the infection overtook them, who had ended up as part of those burn pits in the forest. There were things we did not talk about in the planning tent. I'll go, I said. Lopez closed her eyes for a second, then opened them again. You'll follow the safety rules, she said. No hero moves. If you get one solid look at whatever this is and bring that information back, that's a win. What are the rules of engagement? I asked. I had to phrase it that way for myself, even if we did not use that exact term on the radio. Reynolds answered. If it presents as an immediate threat to your team, you are authorized to defend yourselves using standard service weapons. Avoid sustained fire in the timber. Stay aware of spotting potential. And don't start a new fire we can't control. If you can withdraw safely instead of engaging, you do that. We are not hunting it. We are trying to survive contact and bring back usable data. That sounded reasonable on paper. Out where the trees closed in and the ash still held heat from bodies, I knew it would feel different. They gave me 6 hours to grab food, rest, and check my gear. I did not sleep. I lay in my tent at the incident base with my eyes open, listening to the quiet murmur of the camp generators and the occasional rotor thump of a helicopter repositioning at the helibase. I pictured the burned slopes out on Division Charlie. I pictured the tracks in cooled ash that looked like imprints in glass. Sunset in the forest had become a psychological line for everyone. During daylight, people moved with caution. At night, even inside the supposed safety of the evacuation perimeter, people moved like they were being watched. Our recon team left the incident command post at 1900 hours. The sky over the Cascades was still streaked with orange and purple, but shadows were already filling the Ponderosa stands. The air smelled like dust, char, and the fading sweetness of warm pine sap. I drove a Forest Service law enforcement truck, a white Ford F-150 with a light package and a steel grill guard. Next to me in the passenger seat, ODFW officer Dana Chu checked the charge on her handheld thermal imager. She was in her mid-30s, compact and strong, with black hair braided tight under her cap. She had transferred over from a Marine unit on the coast when the infection started moving through wildlife. She had already seen too much. In the back seat, Specialist James Watts from the Oregon Army National Guard sat next to Sergeant Alex Romero, their assigned medic. Watts had an M4 pattern rifle slung across his chest, muzzle down, and full kit that looked heavy even in the cab. Romero cradled a medical pack with the easy familiarity that comes from knowing exactly where every item sits inside. They spoke quietly to each other, checking radios and confirming frequencies. Behind us, in a separate truck, came hotshot squad boss Miguel Herrera and two of his crew members. They were in green Nomex pants and yellow fire shirts, line gear on their backs, helmets clipped to their packs. On their backs were hand tools, a Pulaski, a McLeod, a shovel. In Herrera's hands, a long metal probe, a combination of a sounding tool and temperature gauge that he used to check ash beds for dangerous hotspots. We traveled west on Cascade Lakes Highway, the road empty except for parked emergency vehicles and the occasional flashing checkpoint. The infection zone lay farther north and east, but the burn operations had expanded in messy shapes as crews tried to contain contaminated remains that had been scattered by panicked people in the early days. There were places we knew held clusters of infected wildlife. There were other places where we weren't sure yet. "Remind me again why this thing is supposed to be heat-resistant?" Watts asked, his voice cutting through the engine noise. "Not heat-resistant," Dana corrected. "Partially resistant. The report said burn-scarred infected with hardened tissue. The theory is that some of the more recent infected individuals were caught in the burn operations, but did not fully succumb before the infection finished whatever it does to the body. So instead of soft tissue breaking down, the heat and infection together changed the outer layers. We've seen something similar with some animal carcasses near hot springs. The tissue takes on a hardened, armor-like quality. That's what they're worried we're dealing with, but mobile and aggressive." I kept my eyes on the road. "You're saying these are infected that went through the burn pits and came out the other side still moving?" "That's the working theory." Dana checked her tablet again. "We don't know how many. We don't know if they can spread the infection the same way. What we do know is that they're drawn back to places where infected remains were burned. Maybe it's scent markers. Maybe it's whatever is left in the soil. Either way, it puts them right where our burn crews have been working." I thought of Crew 7, standing along the edge of a pit, drip torches in hand, watching smoke rise into the evening air. I pictured something moving in the black behind them that did not care that the ash was still hot. We left the pavement after another 20 minutes and turned onto a Forest Service road marked 4606, then took a smaller spur that had been closed to the public with Jersey barriers and "Road Closed Emergency Operations" signs. Beyond the barrier, tire tracks from engines and dozers crisscrossed the dust. Char marks climbed the trunks of the trees, some of them still smoldering faintly from deep-seated embers. At a small clearing that had been flagged as a temporary parking area, I stopped the truck. The hotshot truck pulled in behind us. Off to the north, above the tree line, a faint column of smoke rose into the darkening sky from somewhere on Division Charlie. The burn pits still cooled slowly. "Radio check," I said, keying my handheld. "Recon team to Division Charlie. This is Ranger Mercer. We are at Staging Point Echo, preparing to move on foot." "Copy that, Recon," came the reply. The division supervisor's voice was distorted by distance through a repeater. "You are green to proceed when ready. Check in every 15 minutes. If we lose contact, we will attempt to raise you 3 times. If no reply, we will assume you are withdrawing or unable. No one will be sent in after you until daylight unless you declare an immediate life-threatening emergency and can provide a safe extraction route." "That's comforting," Watts muttered. "That's realistic," Herrera countered, as he joined us at the front of my truck. He had the look of a man who had already accepted that the forest did not care if he was careful. We geared up there at the trucks. I strapped on my duty belt with my sidearm, a Glock in .40 caliber, plus spare magazines. Handcuffs I doubted I would need, a flashlight, a radio, and a small first aid kit. Over that, I pulled on a green Nomex shirt and my Forest Service ball cap. On my back went a small day pack with extra water, fire shelter, and a folded poncho. I carried a patrol rifle from the rack in the cab, checked clear, then loaded and set to safe. The weight of it was both reassuring and sobering. Dana wore her ODFW uniform under a fire-resistant outer layer, her own sidearm in a thigh holster. Slung over her shoulder was a 12-gauge pump shotgun with a short barrel and a side saddle of shells. She had a compact thermal monocular on a lanyard, plus a larger handheld thermal imager clipped to her chest. "Remember," she said as she adjusted the strap, "the thermal will show heat differences. In the black, the ground will still retain heat in places, so whatever we're looking for might stand out as cooler or hotter, depending on how its tissue works now." In the 021 recording, the unknown target had a jagged, uneven heat profile, which is not normal for a person or an animal. That's what we're looking for. "Jagged heat profile," Watts repeated. "That sounds like a fun phrase." "You're the one who volunteered for this detail," Romero told him, checking the straps on his medical pack. Herrera distributed small glow sticks to each of us. "No headlamps once we're inside the black," he reminded us. "Flashlights only when absolutely needed, directed at the ground. Glow sticks for marking trails and hazards. If we light this place up like a stadium, we'll mess with our night vision and give whatever is out there a clear track on us. Understood?" We all nodded. There were procedures you did not argue with, even when facing something undefined. We moved out just as full darkness settled in. The temperature dropped quickly once the sun was gone. The smell of burnt whole forest grew stronger. Under our boots, the ground began to shift from dusty brown to gray-black, the ash from the burn operations still soft in places. Herrera moved point, his sounding tool probing ahead for weak spots or buried logs that could roll. I followed him, rifle at low ready. Behind me came Dana, then Watts and Romero side by side, scanning a little wider with their night observation devices. Our path followed a dozer line that cut a blunt scar through the forest. The scoop marks and pushed earth glowed faintly in the starlight. On either side of the line, the forest was a mix of blackened trunks and untouched trees, the fire having run in strange, irregular fingers when the burn pits were lit and the wind shifted. "What time was engine 346 last heard from?" Watts asked quietly. "About 1930 last night," Dana answered. "Crew 7 reported finishing at the pit around 1800. The ODFW team went quiet around 2000, all within a radius of about 1 kilometer from where we're heading. So, whatever it is, it's comfortable moving around this area, Reyes said. Keep your ears open, Herrera said. You hear any tree creaking that doesn't sound right? You call it out. We don't need a snag coming down on us in the dark on top of everything else. We had gone only a few hundred yards into the main body of the black when the forest's usual background noise began to thin. Crickets faded. Small rustles and underbrush stopped. Even the distant hum of the highway seemed muted, as if something had draped a thick blanket over the world. I noticed it first when my own breathing sounded too loud in my ears. I paused, held up a hand, and the line halted. You hear that? I said. Hear what? Watts whispered. That's the point, I said. Nothing. It's too quiet. We're inside a heavy burn zone, Romero said softly. A lot of the smaller animals probably moved or didn't survive. It's not just that, Dana said, lifting her thermal monocular. The air temperature readings dropped about 3 degrees in the last 50 yards. That shouldn't happen this fast without a dip or drainage. And look at this. She handed me the monocular. Through its small eyepiece, the world turned into shades of gray and white, heat signatures alive against a cooler background. My own team showed up as bright shapes, their faces almost white. The ground was mottled, pockets of residual heat still glowing from deeper ash pockets, little islands of lighter gray. Tree trunks with internal heat still held faint lines of warmth. Then, farther ahead, beyond Herrera, something else appeared. It was not bright the way a living human would show. Instead, it was a patchwork cluster of irregular shapes, some warmer than the surroundings, some cooler, forming a rough humanoid outline but broken, like someone had taken a heat map of a person and shattered it into pieces. It's there, I said quietly. About 30 yards ahead, just off the line to the left. Height maybe 6 feet, maybe a little more. The heat profile is wrong. The outline is jagged. It's standing still. Donna took the monocular back and looked. Even in dim light, I could see her swallow. That matches the description from 021's last footage, she said. It's like the surface temperature is uneven. Some areas very hot, others almost insulated. That would fit with hardened, scarred tissue. Is it facing us? Watts asked. I can't tell, Dana replied. I don't see clear limb outlines, just mass. Everyone down, I said. Slow and controlled, keep eyes on it. We crouched, then slowly shifted into a prone position along the edge of the dozer line, using the lip of pushed dirt as partial cover. I steadied my rifle on the small rise, sighted through my optic, and tried to pick out detail in the dark. Without thermal, it was almost invisible against the background of charred trunks. Then it moved. The motion was smooth and deliberate, not a stumbling gait. It stepped sideways, a cleared space between trees giving it a brief silhouette. In that moment, I saw enough, a human-like shape, taller than average, shoulders slightly hunched. The head seemed slightly too low for the body, as if the neck had compressed. The limbs looked thickened around joints, with irregular bulges. The outer surface caught the starlight in a way that was not skin, not cloth, not bare bark. It was like looking at someone covered in overlapping plates, some dull, some faintly reflective. It's wearing something, Watts whispered. That's not clothing, Dana said. Her voice was very quiet. That's tissue. Look at the way it moves. The plates shift with it. I'm recording now. She tapped the side of her imager. A small indicator blinked. The creature, I had to use the word now, paused as if listening. Its head tilted, not as a curious animal might, but in a way that suggested it was triangulating the source of a sound. Then, without any warning, it moved again, and this time it was fast. It did not run like a human. There was no up and down jostle. Instead, it seemed to glide just above the ash, feet and legs working in quick, controlled motions that barely disturbed the ground. It crossed 10 yards in less time than my brain wanted to process, then slipped behind another cluster of blackened trunks. "It's circling," I said. "It's testing us," Dana added. "How does it know we're here?" Romero asked. "We're downwind. We haven't shown lights. We're quiet." "Heat maybe," Dana said. "Or sound at a range we can't hear, or it just heard us walking before we saw it. Either way, it knows." Herrera shifted, keeping his head low. "Recommend we fall back," he whispered. "We saw it. You got it on thermal. That's more than Engine 346 managed. We call this in, we leave." I wanted to agree with him. The mission, however, had another line item. We were supposed to locate any sign of the missing crews if it could be done without unreasonable risk. Right now, just ahead of where the creature had moved, my eyes picked out a faint rectangular shape half buried in ash, the fender of an engine truck. It was at the edge of a shallow draw, right where the map said Engine 346 had last called in. "Look," I said, nodding toward it. "That's the engine." "Of course it is," Watts muttered. "Division Charlie, this is Mercer," I said into my radio, keeping my voice low. "We have visual on an unknown bipedal target matching the heat profile description from ODFW. Range approximately 25 to 30 yards. Target is moving intermittently through the black, circling our position. We are at grid." I rattled off the coordinates from my GPS. "We also have visual on Engine 346, cab half buried in ash. Request guidance." There was a pause on the other end. I pictured the division supervisor looking at the same map I had stared at earlier. "Copy, Mercer," he said finally. "You have permission to approach the engine for quick assessment, only if the target moves away and you have a clear egress route. If at any point you feel you are in immediate danger, you are to withdraw without delay. We are recording your transmission. Be advised, no other resources are in your immediate vicinity." "Understood," I said. The creature had disappeared from our line of sight. On a regular night, that might have brought some comfort. Tonight, it only turned the dark space ahead of us into a field of unknowns. "Dana," I whispered, "where is it on thermal?" She lifted the monocular again, scanned slowly. "Lost it," she said. "Wait, no. There. It's farther left now, about 40 yards out. It's lower to the ground, maybe crouching. It's not retreating, it's repositioning. We step out of this line. It will be between us and the trucks," Herrera said. "It's trying to get around." "Then we don't step out far," I replied. "We stick to the dozer line. We move as a unit. No one goes off into the black alone. We get to the engine, we take a 30-second look for any sign of the crew, then we retreat. Dana, keep eyes on it as much as possible. Watts, you watch our rear. Romero, you stay in the middle. Herrera, you and your crew keep scanning for snags and ash pits. We move now, we move fast, and we stay together. Agreed?" No one argued. The longer we stayed prone, the more time it had to maneuver. I rose into a crouch, rifle still at low ready, and began to move along the dozer line toward the buried engine. Each step sent a soft puff of ash into the air, the particles clogging my nose with the smell of old smoke and something else I did not want to name. The engine came into clearer view. A green Forest Service Type 6 engine truck. Its cab door hanging open, windshield crazed but not broken. The rear body where the water tank sat was coated in ash. Hand tools lay scattered nearby, half invisible in the gray. I saw a hard hat face down, its chin strap broken. 30 seconds, I said. "Herrera, check the ground around the driver's side. Dana, keep scanning for our friend. Watts, Romero, You stay ready in case anyone is under that rig." Herrera moved ahead with his sounding tool, probing the ash for unsafe spots. He reached the driver's side, looked inside, then back at me. "Cab is empty," he said. "No sign of anyone sitting or belted. There's scuffing on the step, like someone slipped getting out. No drag marks that I can see." That last part was a relief. Drag marks meant you had something to follow. They also meant you were following something you might not want to meet. I scanned the surrounding trees. Dana muttered numbers under her breath, calling out distance estimates as she followed the heat signature. "It's still to our left," she said. "Now about 35 yards. It's moving parallel. It's just staying with us. That's intentional behavior." "It's tracking us," Watts said. "That's great." I stepped around the front of the engine, keeping my shoulders tight to the metal, and saw something that made my throat dry. On the hood, where ash had settled in a fine, even layer, there were prints. Not handprints, not boot prints. They were impressions of something with 5 digits, about the size of a human hand, but with thicker, uneven pads. The edges of the prints had no clear skin ridges, just a rough outline, as if whatever left them had hardened pads instead of fingers. Each print was sunk into the ash and faintly melted into the top layer of paint, like someone had briefly placed something very hot there. "It was on the truck," I said quietly, hands on the hood. "Recently?" Dana asked. "Recently enough that the ash around it is still cooler from being pushed aside," I said, touching the edge of a print lightly with my gloved finger. "And the paint has a slight ripple." Romero took a step closer, stopped himself, then looked out into the dark. "How did it get hot enough to affect the paint without burning itself away?" he asked. "That doesn't add up." "The infection is doing something to the tissue," Dana said. "We have animal carcasses from hot zones where the surface layers hardened rather than broke down. They hold heat differently. They're not like normal skin." 10 seconds, I said. "We're done here. Fall back to the line. Keep the trucks in mind as escape route." Dana's breath caught. "It's closer," she said. 25 yards now. It's moving a little faster. Still off to the left. It's either curious or ready to close the distance." "Back," I said. "Now." We pulled away from the engine and moved back along the dozer line, this time facing left as much as forward, giving up speed for wider awareness. My shoulders itched between the blades. I kept expecting something to come out of the black at chest level. We made it about 50 yards before the creature changed the rules again. It came from above. The only warning we had was a soft cascade of ash from a high branch. It hit my shoulder like fine sand. I looked up in reflex, and that might have saved us because, instead of focusing on where it landed, I saw movement in the canopy. A dark mass detached itself from a blackened limb about 15 feet up and dropped toward the dozer line. Branches creaked and snapped under its weight, but it controlled the fall with hands and feet, making almost no sound beyond the breaking wood. In mid-drop, it twisted, orienting itself toward us. "Contact front," I shouted, more from trained reflex than anything else. The creature hit the ground in a crouch not 20 feet ahead, right on the edge of the line. Even in the low light, I could see its outer surface clearly now. The burn-scarred tissue that had hardened into plates covered most of its visible body. Some plates were smooth and dark, like cooled slag from a metal pour. Others were rougher, ridged and cracked, showing glowing embers of heat in some of the deeper seams. In spots where the plates did not fully overlap, I could see underlying material that looked almost like leather, thick and wrinkled, not like any normal human skin. Its head was lowered slightly, chin close to chest, as if the neck had fused. Where hair should have been was a rough, uneven shell of hardened tissue. The face was the worst part. Enough of its structure remained to be recognizable as once human eye sockets, nose bridge, jawline, but all of it was changed. The skin had split and fused in patterns that turned the face into a mask, with deep, shadowed recesses where the eyes sat. I could not see clearly into them. What I could see was the way it breathed. Each inhale a slightly rasping sound, each exhale a low, rough sigh that pushed air through narrow spaces in the hardened tissue. Its arms were thick near the shoulders, plates overlapping down toward the elbows, then tapering a bit toward the wrists. The hands had 5 digits each, but the fingers were encased in uneven pads like someone had forced gloves on and then baked them rigid. For a brief, very long second, no one moved. Then it took one step forward. It broke the spell. "Stop!" I shouted, purely on instinct, like it would respond to verbal commands. I knew better. Even before it shifted its focus to me, I knew it would not be reasoned with. It moved again, and this time its intent was obvious. Its posture lowered, arms spreading a little for balance, and it launched forward in a controlled rush. "Back, back," I shouted, stepping to the side and bringing my rifle up. We had been told to avoid firing in the timber if possible. Right now, possible did not enter into it. As it closed the distance, I focused on center mass out of habit, then adjusted slightly. The hardened plates across its chest looked thick. The seams between them, near the shoulder joints and the base of the neck, looked less protected. I fired. The muzzle flash lit up the immediate area with a brief strobe of light. The report slammed into the quiet like a hammer. The rounds struck its chest and shoulder, sending small chips of dark material away. The creature staggered but did not fall. It changed its angle instead, moving sideways like a fighter looking for a better opening. "Higher!" Dana shouted. "Go for gaps!" She brought the shotgun up and fired once, the heavier projectiles impacting near where its neck and shoulder met. This time, it reacted more sharply, turning its head toward her. I could not see the expression, if there was one left, but the focus of its body language shifted. It moved toward her with a disturbing smoothness, like its joints were not limited by normal constraints. "Fall back," Herrera yelled, pulling one of his crew members back by the strap of his line gear. "Stay on the line. Don't trip." We stepped backward as a unit, firing controlled shots. I aimed for the same area Dana had hit, near the base of the neck where plates met. Rounds chipped away more hardened tissue, exposing darker material beneath. The creature did not stop. It adjusted its approach, lowering itself even more, almost on all fours now, using its hands to stabilize as it pushed through the ash with surprising speed. "Legs!" Watts shouted, dropping to one knee and sending a burst toward its lower limbs. The rounds struck the plates covering its thighs and shins. It stumbled for the first time, one leg buckling briefly. That gave us just enough time to move another 10 yards back along the dozer line. "Division Charlie, recon team in contact," I snapped into the radio. Unknown infected life form engaged at close range. Multiple rounds fired. Target shows resistance to standard torso shots. We are attempting to withdraw along the dozer line towards staging. "Copy, recon," the division supervisor answered, voice strained now. "All units hold positions. No one moves towards Division Charlie Black. Mercer, your priority is survival. Repeat, survival. If you can disengage, do it." "Working on it," I said through gritted teeth. The creature recovered its footing, then did something I did not expect. Instead of continuing straight at us, it veered slightly and lunged toward a standing tree at the edge of the line. Its hardened hands dug into the charred bark with unpleasant ease, and it climbed. It went up the trunk faster than any unassisted human could, using its powerful limbs and hardened pads to grip damaged bark that would have sloughed off under normal fingers. Within seconds, it was 10 feet up, head turning, tracking our movements. "It's trying to get above us again," Dana said. "Keep moving," Herrera urged. We retreated along the line, but the creature stayed parallel, moving from tree to tree with alarming agility. The canopy above us went from being a static lattice of branches to a potential attack path. Every small shower of ash from above made my shoulders tense. We reached a point where the dozer line intersected a natural drainage, a shallow draw running down toward a creek. The line crossed on a slight berm of pushed dirt and cut branches. To either side, the ground sloped away. "That drainage goes back toward the trucks," I said. "If we cut down it, we might break line of sight and make better speed. And lose the advantage of the dozer line as a clear path," Herrera countered. "The ash will be deeper down there. More hot spots. More chances to go through a root hole." Above us, the creature shifted again. I caught a brief glimpse of its silhouette against a slice of night sky. Limbs bent at angles that would have dislocated a normal person. Plates along its side flexing slightly as it braced itself. "We don't have time to debate," Dana said. "It's lining up another drop." She was right. The creature's posture had changed back into that crouch we had seen before it dropped the first time. It was planning another descent, this time likely to land further along our path, cutting us off. "We go down the drainage," I said. "We move fast, we stay together, we use the slope to increase speed. Herrera, call out any weak ground. If you see smoke coming from the ash, we go round. Move." We pivoted off the dozer line and began to move down into the drainage. The ash was deeper here, clinging to our boots, puffing up with each step. In places, my foot sank almost ankle deep before hitting more solid ground. Herrera's sounding tool became essential, tapping ahead, probing, calling out safe spots and telling us where to step wider. Behind us, there was a heavy, contained thud as the creature dropped from its perch. I did not look back immediately. Looking back has gotten more than one ranger hurt by roots and rocks. I focused on the ground ahead, on Herrera's voice, on keeping my team moving. When we reached the bottom of the draw, the air temperature dropped another few degrees. Somewhere ahead and below, water moved in the creek, faintly audible under the quiet. The ash layer thinned slightly where past flows had carved channels. "Thermal?" I asked, between breaths. Dana lifted the monocular without breaking stride. "It's above us, on the right slope," she said. "It's moving parallel again. I think it prefers traveling on more solid ground. Maybe the ash pockets are harder for it to handle too. That's something." "It's not dropping down after us yet," Watt said. "Why not?" "It doesn't have to rush," Romero said grimly. "It knows we're in a funnel. Maybe it's waiting to see where we come out." We followed the drainage for what felt like a long time but was probably only a few minutes. My calves burned. Sweat ran down my back despite the chill. The trees closed in overhead again, cutting off most of the sky. My GPS told me we were roughly on line to intersect the Forest Service road we had driven in on, about another half-mile ahead. "Almost there," I said. "We keep this up, we hit the road and then the trucks. Once we're on gravel, we can move faster and put metal between us and it." "You're assuming it cares about roads," Watts said. "I'm assuming it cares about how far it wants to carry its own weight," I replied. "Even this thing has to follow physics." Dana's breath hitched. "It's getting closer," she said. "Heat profile is brighter. Distance maybe 20 yards now. It's come down the slope a bit. We've got maybe 1 minute before it's within easy strike distance if it keeps that pace." "Then we need to adjust," Herrera said. Up ahead, the drainage split around a small knoll, one branch curving left, the other right. The left branch had less ash, more visible rock. The right branch was a deeper, wider channel with loose material that could hide hot spots. Left, Herrera said. More solid footing. Will be slower but less likely to go through. Right might be faster, Watts said, looking at the GPS. It's a little more direct toward the road, but you're right about stability. The creature made the decision for us. There was a sudden cascade of debris from the right slope ash, small rocks, bits of charred bark. The creature slid down into the right branch of the drainage about 30 yards ahead, landing in a low crouch facing our general direction. In the thermal imager, it would have flared bright with heat differences, but even to the naked eye, it was a clear, heavy shape in the gray. Left, I snapped. Now. We cut hard to the left branch. The creature reacted immediately, shifting its own weight and moving to intercept. It did not slip or slide in the ash the way we did. Its movements were confident, as if it had already mapped the ground. Division Charlie, Recon Team, I said on the move. Unknown life form is actively tracking and attempting to cut us off in the drainage. We are approximately 400 yards from staging road, moving downhill. Target is showing intent and coordination, requesting any available air asset for overwatch, thermal confirmation, and potential deterrent. There was a pause then. Recon, this is Division. All rotary wing assets are currently grounded due to visibility and safety. We are attempting to get a drone up from the helibase, but it will not be there in time to assist your immediate withdrawal. You are on your own. The honesty of that response was both appreciated and chilling. The left branch of the drainage narrowed, forcing us into single file. Rocks jutted from the sides. The ash layer thinned to a dusting over dirt and stone. Our footing improved, but our options for lateral movement shrank. Distance? I asked Dana without looking back. 15 yards, she said. It's still above us on the right. It's looking for a crossing point. It could drop down on us from there easily. Eyes up, I said. Herrera, look for any side cut we can use. There, he said a moment later, pointing with his tool. Small game trail up the left bank. It might lead out of the drainage onto flatter ground. It's steep, but better than being tunneled in here. We veered toward it. The trail was barely more than a series of breaks in the brush and loose soil. Jackets snagged on branches. Boots slipped. We climbed anyway. Halfway up, the creature made its move. It dropped from the right bank, crossing the drainage in a single leap that kicked up a cloud of ash. It landed just below us on the slope, turned, and began to climb directly toward us. The distance shrank quickly. I planted my boots, pivoted, and raised my rifle. There was no more room for warning shots or carefully chosen words. I aimed for the exposed areas near the base of its neck and the joints of its arms, the places where the hardened plates did not fully overlap. "Keep climbing," I yelled at the others. "Do not stop." I fired in controlled pairs. Rounds struck, sending the chips of plate away. One shot hit a seam near its right shoulder. Something darker sprayed out not the bright color I expected, but a thicker, darker material that oozed sluggishly and smoked where it hit the cooler rock. The creature jerked, its arm momentarily slowing. Then it adjusted and kept coming, using the other limbs to pull itself up. Dana, from above me on the trail, turned and fired another round from the shotgun. The shot impacted its upper chest and lower neck, tearing away more plates. Underneath, I saw glimpses of what used to be muscle tissue now changed to something denser and rope-like. It reacted, but not in a way I had seen in any animal. It paused, as if taking inventory of its own state, then deliberately shifted its weight to minimize use of the damaged limb. Its focus did not shift away from us. It was making decisions. "Mercer!" Herrera shouted from above. "We're almost at the top. Move!" I gave ground slowly, one step back for every 2 shots, keeping my rifle between us. The slope made it difficult to maintain balance. Loose soil shifted under my boots. The creature gained another couple of feet, its hardened pads digging into the dirt with frightening ease. Then, unexpectedly, it stopped. It held itself in place on the slope, one arm flexed, plates along its chest rising and falling slightly as it breathed. Its head tilted, as if listening to something we could not hear. For a moment, I thought it might be reacting to more shots or some unseen threat. Then I understood. It had realized we were about to crest the slope and break line of sight. It had to decide whether to expend more energy pursuing us over unknown ground or pull back and maintain control of the drainage. In that instant, something changed in the forest air. A faint breeze stirred the ash. From somewhere off to our left, far enough to be indistinct but close enough to register, another sound carried. A low, rough exhale, similar to the creature's own, but not in unison. Not one exhale, multiple. Dana's eyes widened. "There's more than one," she whispered. The creature in front of us went very still. The plates along its sides shifted minutely, like an animal reacting to a call. Then, in a move that went against every expectation of a mindless infected, it did not charge. It turned. It pushed off the slope, dropping back into the drainage with controlled movements, then climbed the opposite bank in a series of powerful, efficient motions. Within seconds, it was gone from our direct line of sight, moving toward the faint sounds we had heard. "It's answering them," Romero said. "Or they're answering it." "Either way, we need to get out of here now," I said. We scrambled the rest of the way up the slope. At the top, the ground leveled into a patch of mixed blackened and untouched forest with scattered rocks and old logging debris. Through the trees, about 100 yards ahead, I saw the pale band of gravel that had to be the Forest Service road. "Move," I said, waving them forward. "Straight to the road. Once we're there, we follow it back to the trucks. No more detours." Our pace had turned into a near run, slowed only by obstacles. My lungs burned, my legs felt like wood. Behind us, the sounds in the drainage grew more complex. Multiple movements, the occasional rasp of rough breath, the soft crumble of ash. The plural of unknown predatory life form was something I did not want to think about. We hit the road in a ragged group. The sight of the gravel under my boots felt almost unreal after the unstable ash. I called out another position report to Division Charlie as we started down the road toward staging, no longer trying for complete stealth. Whatever was in the drainage already knew we were there. "Recon team is on Forest Road 4606 Spur, headed east toward staging," I said. "Multiple unknown targets detected in drainage to our right. We are moving to vehicles and will attempt to withdraw to Incident Command. Strongly recommend no further night operations in Division Charlie Black until we can analyze data." "Copy, Recon," the division supervisor said, relief obvious in his voice now. "We've got your beacon on the board. All units, stand by. No one enters the Black on Division Charlie. Mercer, keep this channel open." The trucks came into view around the next bend, white and green shapes parked where we had left them. They looked small and fragile against the backdrop of dark trees. "Everyone load up," I said. "Dana, you're with me again. Herrera, your crew and your rig. Watts, Romero, same truck as before. Weapons on safe once you're inside. We don't need accidental discharges in the cab." As we climbed in, the sounds from the drainage intensified briefly, then faded as we put more distance between us and the source. I could not tell if the creatures were following along the drainage or staying in their carved paths near the Black. I did not intend to find out tonight. I started the engine. The familiar rumble and vibration were comforting. We pulled out, headlights on low beam, and began the drive back toward the Incident Command Post. It was only once the trucks were in motion and the immediate adrenaline started to drain that the shaking began in my hands. I gripped the steering wheel a little tighter until it passed. "Everyone intact?" I asked over the cabin noise. "Minor scrapes," Herrera answered over the radio. "No twisted ankles, no burns, no holes." "Guard team is good," Watts said. "Romero's already planning how to write this in his medical report." "You try writing, no physical injuries, possible long-term stress response on a standard form," Romero replied. "See how fast it gets flagged." Dana was quiet next to me, staring at the handheld thermal imager. "I got most of that recorded," she said finally. "Heat signatures, movement patterns, reactions to impact. Enough to give the lab people something real to work with." "Make backup copies as soon as we're back," I said. "Multiple drives, paper notes, whatever you can do. We can't afford to lose it, like we lost 021's last full stream in their system crash." She nodded. "You think that was really an accident?" she asked quietly. I did not answer. There were some questions I did not want to voice. It was enough that we had seen the thing ourselves, that we were bringing back more than a recording of a scream and a broken transmission. At Incident Command, the world narrowed to debrief forms and controlled chaos. They took our statements separately, then together, cross-referencing timelines and locations. They pulled the thermal footage off Dana's device and mirrored it onto secure servers. They downloaded my body camera data and extracted the segments where the creature had closed with us on the slope, the moments when the plates had shifted and the internal material had shown. Medical staff checked us for burns, strains, and elevated heart rates. They offered counseling resources. We all nodded and said we'd follow up, knowing full well that none of us would sleep properly for a while anyway. Later, after the immediate rush of information had been captured, Reynolds sat us down again in the planning tent with a printed still image from the thermal footage. It showed the creature on the slope, half-turned, heat pattern broken and patchy. Even in grainy monochrome, it looked wrong. "This confirms what ODFW suspected," he said. "We are not just dealing with standard infected individuals. We are dealing with a subset that has been altered by exposure to high heat during the infection process. The hardened tissue is not only resistant to damage, but also capable of retaining and distributing heat in unusual ways. This allows it to tolerate conditions that would incapacitate or destroy normal tissue. It also climbs burned bark like it was born to it," Herrera added. "And it plans. It waits. It decides when to pull back and when to press. That's not just a random infected wandering around." "Agreed," Reynolds said. "For now, all-night operations in the Division Charlie Black are suspended. Daylight operations will be limited to essential tasks with heavy security and full aerial overwatch. Burn pit work will be reevaluated. We may need to change our approach to handling infected remains in the field." "What about the missing crews?" I asked. He looked at me for a long moment. "We will send search teams at first light to the engine and surrounding area," he said. "We will not send them into the black at night. We have to accept some limits, even when it hurts." I wanted to argue. I wanted to say that people were out there, that we had heard someone scream on that recording, that there was a chance, however small, that someone had found a pocket of safety. But I had seen the way the creature moved, the way its hardened plates had deflected rounds, the way it had made decisions in the moment. I had heard the plural breaths in the drainage. Some truths you didn't put into incident action plans. You carried them in the tight set of your jaw and the way you double-checked locks before sleeping. Days blurred after that. The story of the burn-scarred infected in the National Forest leaked out in fragments through rumor and half-understood public briefings. The official language stayed careful. Anomalous infected behavior. elevated threat in containment burn zones, ongoing investigation into missing personnel. The incident complexity classification went up another notch. More specialists arrived, more scientists with tablets and cautious eyes, asking us to describe what we had seen without coloring it with fear. They wanted details. How thick did the plates look? How did they react to different calibers? Did we notice any sensitivity to bright light, loud sound, or certain environmental features? We answered as best we could, sticking to what we had actually observed. Through all of it, one fact remained that no one could explain. The creatures were not leaving the black. They stayed near the burned areas, near the pits where infected remains had been consumed. They moved along the old fire lines, the dozer cuts, the places where we had altered the landscape with heat and steel. The forest had a long memory when it came to scars. Now, something else did too. 3 weeks after that first encounter, I was assigned to a daytime overwatch position on a ridge overlooking another section of the Division Charlie Black. The plan was cautious. A small contingent of heavy equipment operators would enter a shallow portion of the Black under full daylight with aerial support to complete the burial of an older burn pit and install monitoring equipment. My job was to sit on that ridge with a scoped rifle and a long-range thermal optic, watching for any sign of movement that did not match the plan. I set up behind a rock outcrop, prone, rifle resting on a bipod, thermal optic mounted on a small tripod beside me. The sun was high, washing the forest in bright light. In the thermal view, the world was inverted. Cool shadows under tree canopies, hot patches on exposed rock and metal. The heavy equipment, a bulldozer and a small excavator, showed up as bright blobs, engines radiating heat. Down below, the operators worked slowly, blades scooping ash and soil over the old pits, sealing them under layers of earth. A small crew of firefighters stood by with hand tools, watching the tree line. For an hour, nothing happened. Then, in the thermal optic, just at the edge of the black, something flickered. At first, I thought it was a false image. Thermal devices can glitch, especially when pointed near reflective surfaces. But this was not a simple flare. It was a familiar pattern. Irregular patches of heat and cool, forming a rough humanoid outline, broken at the edges like shattered glass. It appeared, disappeared, then appeared again a few yards farther along the edge of the black, as if pacing. I keyed my radio. "Overwatch to operations," I said. "I have a possible unknown heat signature on the north edge of the Division Charlie Black, near the old dozer line. Range approximately 300 yards from the heavy equipment. Pattern matches burn-scarred infected. It's staying just inside the tree line." "Copy, Overwatch," came the calm reply. "Do you have eyes on it visually?" I switched to the rifle scope, scanning the area. At first, I saw nothing, just blackened trunks and patches of untouched green. Then, between two trees, something moved. Not a full body, just a portion of a shoulder, plates overlapping, catching a fragment of sunlight. "Affirmative," I said. "Partial visual, it's there, watching." "Any movement toward our crews?" Operations asked. "Negative," I said. "It's holding near the boundary." "Understood," the voice replied. "Crews, be advised, Overwatch has eyes on a possible anomalous infected at the edge of the black. Maintain your positions. Do not approach the tree line. Overwatch, continue to monitor. If it moves toward the crews, you are cleared to engage within your judgment and the safety parameters we discussed." "Copy," I said. For the next 20 minutes, the situation held in an uneasy balance. The dozer continued to push earth. The excavator continued to scoop. The firefighters shifted their weight but kept their faces toward the trees. The creature, I had no doubt it was one of them, now paced along the edge, occasionally pausing to place one hardened hand against a charred trunk. More than once, it disappeared entirely from my scope, only to reappear farther along. Each time it did, my heart rate jumped, but it never crossed an invisible line. It did not run into the open. It did not descend on the cruise. It stayed where the burned ground and the untouched forest met. It was as if it was guarding, or maybe simply bound to, the places we had altered with fire. I watched it for so long that the image burned a ghostly afterimage into my vision when I blinked. The longer I looked, the more convinced I became that this was not random behavior. It had patterns, it had preferences, it had focus. When the heavy equipment finally backed out of the black and onto more stable ground, the creature reacted. It tilted its head as if tracking the sound, then took a few steps forward into the open, just enough for the crews to see it. Down below, I saw several firefighters stiffen. One pointed. Another slowly raised a camera. In my scope, the creature's face turned toward them. Even at this distance, I felt the weight of that unseen gaze. It stood there, framed by blackened trunks and fresh piles of earth, plates along its body catching the sun in small, dull glints. "This is Overwatch," I said into the radio. "Unknown. At the edge of the black has stepped into the open. It is approximately 250 yards from the cruise. It is not advancing further at this time. Do you want me to engage?" There was a pause. On another channel, I could hear the division supervisor conferring with someone else, probably Reynolds or one of the scientists. "Negative for now, Overwatch," the reply came. "Crews are withdrawing to safe distance. The target is not actively attacking. We want to see if it stays with the black or follows. If it approaches the cruise, you have authorization to use controlled fire to deter." "Understood," I said. Down below, the dozer turned and rumbled slowly up the slope, away from the black. The excavator followed. The firefighters walked backward for several yards, then turned and moved more quickly toward their staging area. No one ran, but the tension in their bodies showed even at this distance. The creature watched them go. It took one step forward, maybe two. My finger rested on the trigger, the stock solid against my shoulder. The crosshairs stayed centered on the seam between its neck plates and upper chest. I could see small cracks in the plates, places scarred by previous impacts. It stopped. Then, slowly, it stepped backward. One step, then another, until it was once again at the boundary where burned ground met untouched forest. It turned, placed one hand on the charred trunk of a tree and disappeared into the shadows. It did not follow the cruise. "Overwatch to operations," I said. "Target has retreated back into the black and is no longer visible on thermal or visual. Crews have cleared the immediate area." "Copy," operations replied. "All crews continue withdrawal to designated break area. Overwatch, maintain surveillance for another 15 minutes, then return to base. Good work." Good work. The phrase felt strange after watching something that should not exist make a choice not to attack. But in incident management, good work often meant, "We survived this rotation and learned something useful." On my drive back to Incident Command that afternoon, I thought about the first time I'd heard the creature's breathing in the darkness. About the tracks melted into the ash like impressions in glass, about the scream on Engine 346's last recording. We still had not recovered the missing crews. We had more data, more images, more carefully worded bullet points on safety sheets. We had a growing catalog of burn-scarred infected behavior patterns. But we did not have closure, and we did not have control. The forest does not give up its secrets easily, even when they walk on two legs and leave tracks in the ash. I stayed on the incident through another month of rotations. During that time, sightings of the burn-scarred infected remained clustered around the original burn pits and containment lines. They did not appear in town. They did not roam the highways. They did not venture into unburned recreation sites farther from the infection zone. As far as anyone could tell, they were bound to the places where heat and infection had mixed in the soil. Scientists constructed theories. Fire behavior analysts modified their models. Law enforcement updated their guidance to include, do not approach the black alone, even in daylight, and, if hardened infected are observed, prioritize distance and documentation over engagement. For my part, I kept doing what I had always done, driving forest roads, checking gates, talking to the few remaining residents who had chosen to live near the edge of the evacuation zone. The difference was that now, when I stopped the truck and stepped out to listen to the wind in the trees, I sometimes caught myself holding my breath, listening for a rasp that did not belong. There were nights when the radio would crackle with an odd report from a remote camera, a flicker of irregular heat, a shadow moving where none should be. Each time, a patrol would go out at first light, find tracks that started and ended in the ash, and nothing more. People asked me, when the incident finally wound down enough for the media to lose interest, whether I believed those things in the forest would ever leave, whether they would come down the mountains and into the city. I answered honestly. I don't think they want to, I said. Everything about their behavior says they're tied to those burn zones. Those places are their world now. As long as we respect that boundary and keep people out of the black, I think they'll stay there. And if we don't? One reporter asked. Then we break the containment for them, I said. And I don't think any of us want to see what that looks like. The truth is, I don't know what they want. If they want anything at all beyond whatever the infection drives them to do. I know that they move with purpose. I know that fire did not destroy them. It changed them, hardened them, gave them armor against the ashes we put them in. I know that somewhere out there in the Deschutes National Forest, along the old Division Charlie line, there are still places where the ground remembers the heat of burn pits and the echo of screams. And in those places, when the sun goes down and the temperature drops, something moves between the trees, breathing through scarred plates, listening for footsteps in the ash. I told this story because recordings and thermal images are not enough. Data is important, but so is the memory of how it felt to watch something impossible make choices in the dark. If this ever happens again in another forest, in another evacuated zone where infected remains are burned in haste, someone needs to recall that we learned the hard way that fire is not always the end for what we are trying to contain. Sometimes, it is just the beginning of something harder. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe. Your support keeps these creepypastas coming. Until next time, stay alert, stay safe, and never ignore the feeling that something is watching.